All right, we're live finally. Thanks to everybody for being patient. I don't know if there's anybody even watching this yet. I don't know if people are on the previous stream or what. We'll see. Hopefully, people will be on it. If not, it'll be archived, and you can watch it later. That's fine. That's fine. Over. Happy President's Day, everyone.
Yes, I spent the whole day just thinking about presidents and all the things they've done, stuff like that.
Old Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, peanut farmer.
Not gonna be. He's still alive, but he's in hospice care, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's what I heard. But isn't he like 189 years old? So
yeah, he was like building Habitat for Humanity houses like 5 days ago. So I mean, that's crazy. Time for rest for old Jimmy, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right, so Jason, I don't know why I'm like holding them. I'm not using the mic. If nobody's watching yet, but if people are, please let me know how this sounds because I'm using a different mic. We had some technical issues with echo and Jason not being able to hear me, and then me using my nice blue Yeti mic and it sounding like a grindcore project. So
it was a noise project. Dude.
Yeah, let me know how I sound out there. Probably not as good as usual. Probably not the usual velvet tone that I have to my voice. Jason.
Yes.
What have you been getting into lately?
Oh man.
What kind of content have you been enjoying?
Well,
kind of art?
I got something right here, Patrick.
Oh, the new Malaeus.
All day and all night since it came.
Mal Eats.
I double dipped and I bought it on vinyl, and I'm such a 90s kid that I haven't even listened to the record yet because I've just been spinning this in my car all day.
I would be too if I had a CD player in my car.
Yeah.
It's great. It's really good.
This thing is fucking sick. Even the layout is awesome on it. Everything they did is just amazing.
It's really, really awesome. I mentioned because I just did an actual video, like an update that I just finished editing. And the first thing I talked about is the new Malaeus. And of course, sang the high praise. And I was like, the original cover art featured a bunch of actors portraying dead colonists killed by like an indigenous uprising in a historic battle in, I think, Salem. At least the historic cottage that we did the photo shoot for was in Salem.
Yeah.
And I was like, that didn't pan out for one reason or another. I think something happened with the person who did the photographs. They either, I don't know exactly what happened. They didn't like have them for them or lost them. Something pandemic related affected it. So I was like, well, instead we have this beautiful painting. It's like, that's a happy accident,
I remember you doing that photo shoot. It was right before COVID, right?
It was like 3 days before COVID.
Yeah,
really.
I remember that. I remember you talking about that because it was like cold or something, and you guys were like lying on the ground and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, I was wearing a tunic or whatever the fuck, like laying on the ground. So yeah, it's great. It's a big departure, I feel like, from their previous records that were really good. But it's like got like this. I mean, I talked to Spraker about it. He's like, yeah, we're like drawing a lot of inspiration from early Metallica. And I was like, yeah, I can tell. It's like
there's some riffs, dude.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like breakdown-y really kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Chris would probably hate me saying that, so I didn't say it.
Well, I don't think they're like drawing from anything breakdowny as far as inspiration. It just so happens that breakdowny bands like we're listening to a lot of Metallica, and I think that's where they got that crunch from. It's the same well of influence they're drawing from. So,
and they've had a bunch of lineup kind of flips and people out and people in and changes too. But I'm assuming because I haven't really been super plugged in that people like know what this is. I mean, I haven't been paying attention. Has it like been popping up in the blogosphere or videos or anything like that?
I'm not sure because I'm not super connected to a lot of stuff. Like I've gotten to a point where I don't watch a lot of people outside of my like closest friends' videos. And like, it's not to be exclusionary or like a snob or anything. I just burned out on watching people talk about their records for a long time. But I feel like I'm kind of like coming back around and I want to watch other people's stuff. So I don't know what the kids are talking about necessarily. It seems to be like pretty well received, like sort of into with like punks that are into black metal and stuff. But as far as like real underground metal types, like I don't know. I know they were featured on the Bandcamp radio thing for metal, so that's really cool.
I saw that. Yeah.
I really want to listen to the interviews, but I have to like figure out how to fast forward past the songs because I'm not really too into most of the artists that were featured on that radio thing. I just want to listen to the interviews with Chris and Nelson. So I got to get around to that because I know that like the lyrics have like a pretty serious historical connotation and stuff. Yeah. And I was wondering specifically because I know they get into that on that interview. So I'd really like to listen to that.
Well, the thing about so I tried listening to that, but this is going to be like a boomer comment that will go back to our us having audio issues a little while ago. So at work. So I go to work really early in the morning. I'm punched in at 5 a.m. and I have no human contact until like 8-9 o'clock ish. So usually I just blast stuff on my phone, but for whatever reason on Bandcamp, the window won't stay open. And when it closes, like it goes to sleep, it stops playing. And then I gotta like
do you use the app or are you going on like the website on your phone?
I'm on the website.
Oh, get the app, man.
Yeah, and it's just like the most fucking infuriating thing because it'll be like mid-interview, be like, well, actually, and then it's just nothing, and I open my phone and it's like the screen's black, and I like I have to put my password in, and it's just like restarted, and I'm like,
a similar thing. I get a text from Amanda at work, and she's like, "It's like they got my letter mentally or something. Like the psychic waves I was putting out into the universe, they finally responded. It was like Bandcamp, you can finally make playlists." And then I go on my app, and I can't. And I'm like, what? I'm looking for updates. There's no updates. We have the exact same phones, so it's not that. I'm like, finally you can do, because that's one of the things about Bandcamp that was like not so great. You could randomly shuffle through your library or collection, but you couldn't make playlists. Now you can. Apparently only my wife can. So like, but I'm waiting for that to come along. But yeah, I don't know. I've been listening to a few things. I just made an update, like I said, so I don't want to like, double dip necessarily, but I've got this friend back in Syracuse who's like one of my oldest friends that I met going to hardcore shows and who was like one of like 2 or 3 people that was into death metal or that admitted they were into death metal. I find out years and years later from knowing some of the old heads from my scene that like all those guys in the Syracuse bands were, of course, into death metal, like listened to their records, but nobody really repped the shirts or like talked about it so much. It was like, I guess, embarrassing for them or something. But the one kid that I met at a show that was like wearing like an Exhorter long sleeve and we became fast friends. He just sent me a mixtape through the mail, which was really cool. So I made him one back. And I had that kind of thing where you're getting to the end of a mix, and you have to like kind of put shorter and shorter songs because you don't know when the tape's going to run out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
So like I put some of this, like, of course, like going through and doing that, you have to like listen to a bunch of songs to figure out what the best one is. And I put one of the tracks from this Asocial. It's a re-release of the Asocial demo. How Could Hardcore Be Any Worse? And which is great. I mean, I thought it was a standalone release because I tried to file it on Discogs and enter the information in. And apparently it came with a issue of Short, Fast, and Loud. But yeah, like ripping noisy Swedish hardcore proto grind stuff. Awesome. So I listened to that a bunch. And of course, what would the end of any mixtape for a death metal guy be without a Dahmer track? Just to cram in there last 30 seconds,
Just shoehorn that right in.
Yeah, I fucking love Dahmer. And then like this dude is super into metal. Doesn't really mess around with like a lot of punk and stuff like that. Never did even back then. But he's like, man, I need a tape of I need a mix of like Danzig era Misfits. First of all, there's only one era Misfits. Okay.
Famous Monsters is not bad.
Famous Monsters is not bad. You're right. I'm just whatever. It's just a different band. But anyway, I got all these boots on eBay. And I think I talked about them. I did like a fan club edition update recently.
Yeah.
But I got the 12 hits from hell.
Nice.
And this is just a bunch of, this might be a lot of the same stuff that's on that one Misfits boot that you got, that really nice looking one with the bullet kind of reimagining on it.
Yeah, I was gonna.
It's it's called Beyond Evil, and it's got 22 tracks, and there's versions I don't recognize even from the box set, so that's cool.
This Bad Larry, which is funny because I was out. I went to a show last night, and I was talking about this. A lot of people were talking about it, like because I posted on Instagram, so they're asking me like what is it? And I'm like, it's like these aren't like, you know, like the Misfits bootleg Nightmare Wormhole where there's like 8,000 bootlegs and they're like fucking horrible. They always sound like a talk boy underneath a jacket in the back of the club, or you can hear people talking. Like these are studio outtakes, so this is like, these are like legit recorded. It's not like, but it's good. I mean, it didn't blow my mind. It's cool for a bootleg. It's worth it. It's expensive. It was like $30, but
mostly they are.
I was joking around last night that, like, you know, you got to get this now because I heard Danzig set out his like werewolf army to find out who bootlegged it. They're roaming the street. his pack of wolves are roaming the streets waiting to attack.
He's gonna kick back with a 3-liter bottle of Mountain Dew. Wait for
a little
bottle of Mountain Dew. And then this is Beware and the Rest. So that's like the Beware set. It's basically like a 7-inch collection. So I've made a 2-hour tape. I have a few 120-minute tapes. The mix I made was also 2 hours, and then the Misfits compilation was also 2 hours. So that should sate him.
Remember, I know we might have touched upon it briefly in streams and stuff, but the Misfits are one of those bands where now it's so accessible. But at one point, it was the most inaccessible band of all time.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to explain to people that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I hate going, I feel like more and more boomerish by the day. And I know that there are probably kids that are, you know, younger millennials / Zoomer age that are just like, okay, we get there was no internet at one point. We understand. Like, but I mean, that air of mystery, I think it's replicated with certain bands nowadays. They keep things like relatively quiet about, you know, you can do that with the internet still, but it's just so weird to think of specifically the Misfits, who are like the next generation's version of Kiss, essentially, with all the merchandising and all that stuff, like being completely shrouded in mystery. Like one interview with Danzig from 1987 at Thrasher, like maybe a couple of fanzines, word of mouth, like, you know, and I mean, all I could get, I don't know about in Mass at the time, but in upstate New York, all I could get was the chains in the malls, and Collection 1, Earth AD, and Walk Among Us, and none of them had any, there's no vinyl. It was mostly on tape or CD, and none of them had liner notes. Like,
no. And well, you know, when you were living in Mass, it's a different store, and I have plenty. They're called fan club editions. It's a different store and a different thing now. But like, you know, growing up for me with like, you know, everyone in New England and Massachusetts knows is like Newbury Comics was unbelievable. Huge. Like you could walk in and find like those Misfit CDs where you couldn't find them anywhere else. They were just I mean, I could do a whole probably like 10-part series. My son's destroying the game. I can do a whole 10-part series of Newbury Comics in my life, like, because now it's just such a semi-shadow of what it was, which is like sad. But back then, you could walk in there and you could find like punk, like legit underground releases that came out 2 days before in the 7-inch bin. Like,
and it wasn't even that long ago. Like I remember, I mean, it was. I guess now that I think about it, it's probably like 15 years ago now. But I mean, I remember going into the one on Newbury Street and being like, oh, they have the new paint box, like stuff that was relatively underground they had. I remember going into the Harvard Square one and getting all kinds of obscure like industrial and stuff. And like they had the Septic Death crossed out twice discography. It was there for like 3 seconds. Somebody bought it before I could get to it, you know?
Yeah.
Newbury Comics was great.
And
I still think I just saw Ben. Ben says hi. I just saw. I think that Bull Moose is still pretty rad, though, right? Speaking of like Maine and stuff from Maine, people from Maine.
They are, but they're. I don't know. Newbury Comics just had like maybe just because it's my age, like there was a store I went to like when I was young, getting into music, that like I just have that connection to it. Bull Moose for me, the last bunch of times I've gone, I end up buying more like weird like boutique Blu-rays than I do actual like records. Like they have cool stuff, but a lot of the stuff I want now, I order direct from bands or from like distros, like this cool one called Ground Zero Salem. I don't know if you guys hit that one up yet. That's a neat distro. But then like like Grave Mistake and stuff like that, or Sorry State and all of them, like Beach Impediment, all that stuff. But Bull Moose is like, I mean, I buy records from there when I'm in the New Hampshire and Maine, but like nothing really like makes me do backflips out the door.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say at this stage in our collective lives and our we because I mean part and parcel of me starting the distro is I have almost, as far as old stuff goes, I still have a few grails or whatever you want to call them, few things on the want list, but I'm pretty good. I don't have my sights set super high. I just was like, any format's fine. There's certain records I want, and I have pretty much everything at this point. So I might as well start buying stuff to sell to other people and like keep a double here and there of like stuff that I really like.
Yeah, for me now it's like, not to make me sound like a cool dude, but it's like mortgage payment records now for me. Where it's like, oh, the Negative Approach 7-inch, like I need that. That's like a friggin' like $2,000. I'll probably never own one.
Yeah, and I'm not that kind of collector myself where I have the Total Recall. I have that on tape and bootleg or fan club edition LP. So, and I'm like, I have the repress of the 7-inch too, which with a weird airbrushed cover that you can flip out and just be like, okay, here's the original. We'll put that in front.
Why they did that?
I don't know. So I don't really care about having OG copies for the most part. If they're within my price range, yeah. But and like it depends, like if they're in my price range and if the reissue really sucks, like I'll try to track down an OG. But if the reissue's decent, I don't care. That's just me though.
I just want to hold one, cuddle it, smell it. It smells 40 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy too. That's getting to be, that's about how old that shit is.
And they still play all the time.
Yeah. And yeah, that's Negative Approach is pretty unique in that sense. They're one of the few old bands that they got back together. They were done and reformed. I think John Brannon's the only original member, but it's older dudes.
Yeah. It's like John Brannon, but guys who were like probably around when Negative Approach was like a new band.
Yeah, it might. Is there a couple of guys from Easy Action or something like his
I think
last?
So. Yeah, one.
But there's those two factors, which are almost always spelled disaster for like reformed early '80s bands. And I think they haven't recorded any new stuff, so that's a thing on the bingo card that hasn't been marked off. But like they're awesome. They're like even angrier than they were in the early '80s. So I mean, very singular in that sense. Like there's not too many. We don't need to name any names. There's not too many early '80s hardcore bands where you're like, oh, I'm really glad they got back together. They're so good.
Nothing worse when you see a band who hasn't been like a band for like a decade or a decade and a half, and they're like, here's a new one, and you're just like, especially when they have like a catalog too. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need new songs, bro. No need for new songs.
I mean, and there's the bands that never broke up, and those are kind of hit or miss too. But I mean, every time I've seen DRI, they've been really good. The handful of times I've seen Jerry's Kids, really, really good.
Yeah, they were always sick.
DOA, decent.
I've never seen DOA, believe it or not. Somehow they've just never. I've never had it made it happen.
I saw them open for Negative Approach at church in Boston, and that's the crazy Social Chaos tour that came through in like 2000 or whenever that was, with like Murphy's Law, not Oxymoron, Murphy's Law, the Anti-Heroes, Vice Squad, Sloppy Seconds, DRI, DOA.
Yeah, actually, to be honest with you, I was at that show at church. I didn't see DOA. I saw Negative Approach, and then I think I drank like 47 Miller Lights.
You were not alone that day. I still occasionally see pictures pop up on I think TJ took some really good pictures that pop up on social media now and again. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, you just tell. You can just see there's nothing behind the eyes.
I was still straight edge then. So I remember everything.
Yeah.
We traded places.
Yes. Coin flipped. I'm boring now.
I'm so fucking exciting. How was your latest update received? I think a lot of people were happy to see you.
It did really well. I was planning to do that for a while. I'm still trying to get into making videos. It's just with like I'm in like a crazy schedule crunch with just life.
Yeah.
Like I still buy music and listen to it. I just can't like I get like these little windows of free time. Like during the week, I'm pretty much useless. Like I can't get time. Like I get out of work, my wife's working. I've my son, and then I eat dinner, and it's like 7 o'clock at night, and I've been up since 4, and I'm like I could shoot a video, or I could watch TV, and the TV usually wins. You know?
I hear you.
And then on the weekends, we've been actually just doing things, like trying to get out of the house and just even if it's dumb shit, like we'll go to a mall and go out to dinner with my son just to pack it in. Yeah, actually, my wife was kind enough. She's commenting now. She was kind enough on Thursdays to have to be off site to have to leave because she works from home. But Thursdays was her out of office for home. She'd have to go to different work sites for her company she works for. And then the last 3 Thursdays she's done that, I've had to go to meetings all day for like union stuff. And I actually get home like after she does. So it's like we tried to carve a little corner for us, a little corner for myself to like get back into like, because filming a video, I don't edit my stuff, which, you guys know, as you probably have seen if you watch my stuff. But it's like, it takes a little bit of time. Like I got to film it. And then I got to like, for me on my phone, I got to flip it because I don't have the reverse camera. And then I got to upload it. It takes like a few hours. And like, I was like, oh, my son's in daycare on Thursday. So later on, and like my wife, Jen, is going to be like out of the house, like doing offsite work. And then the last 3 of them, it's like, I have to do a negotiation meeting or I have to like go. Like last week I had to do a bunch of union related stuff where I had to go to different like banks and with accounts and clear accounts. And I get home and it's like 6 o'clock and I'm like, my free day is ruined. I didn't have a free day. So like, it's kind of been putting a little bit of damper on that too. I have stacks of video. Like I have stacks of records I intend for videos. I just got to make the video.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I also have the same like philosophy. Like in the evenings after Griff gets home from school, he has an after school track out place that he goes. But when he gets home at 5, I'm not going to be trying to make a video. I've got dinner to make, or at least help out with the dishes if Amanda does it, and then it's hanging out and then hanging out with my wife. Like I'm not. That's what that time of day is for, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And like during the week, like if on like a regular day, I could probably make a video at like 8 o'clock at night. But at 8 o'clock at night on a weekday for me, I've been awake for 16 hours. So I don't know like how energetic, super stoked Jason you're gonna get. It's probably just gonna be me like, yeah, this is a record, whatever. I gotta go to work tomorrow. And I'm just not gonna do it. And if I'm gonna be like that, I'm just not gonna do a video. It's just not
exactly. You have to have something to say like about records. Yeah. It's funny because like I've since in the past years I've been super critical of the quality of my videos, just in the sense where like I don't want to keep repeating myself,
Yeah.
adjectives, overused adjectives and stuff, and whatever. Like it's never going to be perfect the way you like it and all that. But I'll be like, I haven't done an update in weeks. I'm going to shoot one real quick, and I'll false start like for like 20 minutes, and then finally start it, kind of meander my way through it, and think that it sucked, and then I'll be in the editing process, and I'm like, man, I'm awesome.
Yeah. I don't even edit, man. I just don't even have the. I would like to, but it's just, Pat. I'm real lazy sometimes.
Yeah, I'm
just not there. Like,
I've got into the editing thing because I don't know if it's that I'm noticing it more because I do videos, or if it's just because I don't know, I'm getting older and more like into something neurologically is occurring, where I'm stumbling over my words more. I think I've always been kind of a mush mouth, to be honest, but I will go back and correct that stuff if I repeat myself or trip over words. I've noticed lately, especially in casual conversations like this, watching streams back, I'm trying to make an effort to say like less and and because it seems like it's almost like a tick at this point. It feels like it's every other word, and it drives me bonkers watching that back. So I'll go in and like take all that kind of stuff out.
Yeah.
But once I started getting kind of intense about editing, I had to back off, like force myself to back off a little bit, because I would spend 4 hours editing a video. You know what I mean? So
I would know what mine is yeah. I go, yeah. And like sometimes I know I'm doing it, and it's weird because sometimes makes me feel like I'm being dismissive, but I'm really not. I'm like, I'm listening to you, but I'm acknowledged. But like sometimes it just hits me where like I might sound like I'm just going, yeah, but I'm really not. I'm listening. I'm just acknowledging that like my brain is processing what you said. So if you hear me say yeah, I'm here.
I am present.
As present as I can be.
Right on. So, and you also, another thing with you, when I think of Jason Hook, I think of somebody that still regularly attends rock concerts, gigs.
I try to.
And how often? I mean, it sounds like you make it out to shows like fairly often, like at least a couple times a month, right?
Yeah, usually a couple times a month. Like I was at one last night. I saw ICU, Burning Lord. This band called, I think it's Grip. It's spelled grip for us like American idiots, but it's like Gripe, I think, or Gripe.
Yep, I saw a flyer for it online.
Yeah, and then this band called Delco MFs from Philly. I think Delco, I believe, is Delaware County, but that's a guy from like that band Dark Thoughts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the band played for 12 minutes. They're like Nine Shock psycho, like hammer you in the head, bye, good night. Like they're actually fucking sick. I ordered their 7-inch this morning. They didn't have any 7-inches yesterday. Good old Discogs coming through at like 7:30 when I was sitting on my couch. But yeah, and that band like Gripe, I believe it's Gripe. I'm sorry if it's wrong. Like they were like a snotty hardcore where the singer put on skateboard elbow and knee pads because he was just like writhing and tossing himself onto the floor, like the stage, the whole time they were playing.
Nice.
So, yeah, it was a cool show. I try to get to as many as I can. Like it's weird. We'll get into that, Jen. It was weird. Like I've had to skip shows too, which like I used to not. Like this Friday, I'm seeing Gorilla Biscuits at the Middle East downstairs, which is like I'm stoked for that. But I try to go as many as I can. See, I have one friend around here that still like goes to shows regularly with me, Jay Yetman. Yep. So I pick him up.
Big Crazy Jay, as we used to call him.
Yeah, Crazy Jay, formerly known. I pick him up because he lives a couple towns over from me in the suburbs down here, and then usually he'll like buy me some like sodas or like pay for like my ticket or whatever, and then like that's because I'm sober, and that's like the cost. You can drink some beers and go to the gig, and I get like a record out of it.
Nice.
Or door paid, you know.
It's a good symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. I love Jay. Jay's a great guy.
Yeah, I've known him forever. It was weird. So last night, this is going to be anyone not from Massachusetts is probably going to be bored in about 2 seconds. So I'll make this real quick. So last night it was Jay and myself, and then we met up with Steve Quicks.
Love Steve too.
While we were at the show, we hung out with Mark Unseen, and Brian from A Global Threat, and then we were hanging out in the bar, and then afterwards we went to the new Man Ray and ran into Chris Pittman. So it was the ultimate like 2002 2002 Boston Street Punk Idiot Coalition hangout session.
Yeah, there's a lot of pogo in that hang.
Yeah.
A lot of spiking your hair with beer.
Yeah. It was fun. We were just like telling, because back in the early 2000s, we would just like, it's like we just hung out. That's how you met everyone. And we would just like walk around. Sometimes we'd throw eggs at people or just do weird stuff. Like, just kind of just be like punks, literally. Yeah. And now we're all like 40 something years old and still running into each other at shows. It's like, it's kind of interesting to think about, because I never thought this far ahead.
Yeah, it is crazy, and unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot about Boston that I do not fucking miss.
Oh, I'm sure. There's a lot, I live here, and there's a lot of things I'm not a big fan of either.
I do miss the people though quite a bit. I would love to run into Steve Quicks and Pittman. It's I say what's up to those guys on social media and everything, and we're in some of the same Facebook groups or whatever, but it's definitely no replacement for IRL hangs, Yeah.
But, like we used to hang out all the time. Like you just showed up at places. That's all you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I fell in love with Boston, because I mean, there was that element in other towns. In 1998, I was like, I got to get out of Syracuse. Mm-hmm. There's nothing going on here. I don't want to be trapped here for the rest of my life. So a friend of mine and I like got on a Greyhound and we went to a bunch of cities. And the first one that we came to was, Cambridge, but we came to Harvard Square, and Harvard Square in the late 90s was just full of like kids up to no good. Yeah. Not all of them were up to no good, but it was full of like punks and ravers and like runaways and like goths and stuff. And it was just people hanging out outside, like the first night I came through was on a Monday, and there's like 150 kids hanging out in Harvard Square. It felt like And I mean, we went to Chicago, and Chicago was really cool. We met some cool people, but we tried to like hang out. Like there's a strip of, I forget the name of the big street in Chicago, but it's where the alley is, like the punk clothing store, punk and goth clothing store. And there's like a Dunkin' Donuts where people used to hang out at, but you couldn't stand on the sidewalk or anywhere stationary for more than 2 or 3 minutes without cops telling you to move it along.
Yeah.
And I mean, we ended up in Oakland and Berkeley, and that was cool too. And we met some like kind of punk, crusty punk kind of people, but they were weirdly snobby and like made a lot of references to how they were like dope sick and stuff. And I was like, okay, this really isn't my scene. So like, I mean, Boston was pretty, I mean, I'm sure people hung out. Like, I know that like Northern Jersey and New York and places like that, like had that too. But it was very super welcoming in Boston. Like I made a ton of friends. I was there for like 2 weeks and like had a bunch of friends like by the time that I hit the road. And I actually came back after being in Oakland. I came back and stayed with Ross and Rage, that little skinhead dude, for like, I don't know. I stayed with them for like 2 weeks and had no money, but I just like hung out the whole time and it was great, So
I remember we used to go, like, would meet up randomly, like in Harvard Square or somewhere, and then like there'd be like a show, and we would just all like walk to the show, but it'd be like 50 people showing up at the same time, like just walking down, like like showing up at the Elks Lodge. You just like hear like the bondage belts jingling coming down the street.
Yeah, like I think the first punk show, one of the first punk shows, it was like during that first visit. One of the first punk shows that I went to was like way in I think it was Quincy Center. It was huge. It was like every punk band you can think of.
The infamous 12-hour show at the church.
Yeah, it was like the
Casualties buried in the basement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of the
idea.
Adams is buried. It has like a tomb in the basement. I remember there's a fucking there's a PBR can on his tomb.
But yeah, that show was the same day as the Freedom Rally in
Yep.
Boston Commons. So there's a bunch of us at that, and then we all like hopped on a train. It was like one of the first times I hung out with Dan Wars. There were like 20 or 30 of us on the train from what I remember. And like, you know, and even at that point though, I was in my late teens, early 20s and had some social anxiety issues. So I was never really down with the whole like, let's be punks and let's be obnoxious and bother people on purpose kind of thing.
Yeah.
It always like made me cringe. So you can imagine like hanging out with all those like Boston punk kids at the time being like, yeah, like
100% doing that.
Shit. I was like, God, guys, grow up. What the fuck?
we used to walk through Alston on one side of the street, and someone who will remain nameless would take eggs and like grenade them over the street onto the sidewalk on the other side and just hit random people while they were walking walking in the opposite direction. And then like they'd turn around and they would just see like 20 kids standing there and they'd just be like, and just keep walking.
Yep.
Just dumb shit like that. Like stuff now that would piss me off. I'd be like, what the fuck? So like I think about that shit back then. I'm like, man, if like anyone did like 10% of the dumb shit that we used to do to me now, I'd be so bummed. Like I'd be so fucking bummed.
I was definitely in that mode briefly, like I want to say like my senior year and maybe the year after that for a little bit, like just when I was like in my really, because nobody in Boston ever even saw me in that particular phase. I've had many, but you know, I had like a, you know, a spiky hair drunk punk kind of thing where I was like acting the fool a fair amount. And most of the time that was when I lived in Rochester, New York. That actually in Rochester had a lot of punk kids like chilling on the street and stuff like that back then too, but nowhere near with the level that Boston was at. That's a good question. I don't know this dude. Do you know this dude? Punk rocker named Ben that does special effects movies.
Yeah. I've met him a handful of times. He was in a band I can't think of right now. I know who he. I don't know him personally. I know who you're talking about though. I've hung out with him a bunch of times. I got like house parties and stuff back in the day.
Yeah, I have no idea. I know another punk named Ben from Maine. We call him Ben from Maine.
That was another thing too. That like I don't know if other areas did this, but like everyone had a fucking nickname.
Syracuse was bad for that.
And the thing for me that sucked was because of my last name. It just like incorporated a nickname because people thought it was a nickname because they're like, "Oh, Hook! Like, why do you have the nickname Hook?" And I'm just like, I was born with it.
Yeah. There's definitely. I mean, because I had
some
those,
of them
like,
aren't flattering. Some of the nicknames aren't flattering. They're not.
Well,
You did not choose them.
Yeah, I can think of a few people specifically that I won't name. I'm like, oh man, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Because you're forever known by that name, forever.
Yeah. Well, in some cases, but I was just known as briefly. I was known as Pat Dreads because I had dreadlocks back then. It's real imaginative, you know. But yeah, no, Syracuse also had that to the extent where it was like the hardcore edition of it. There was like Mike Attack and X Brendan X and like Mike X, and there were several edges, several X's.
My friends are in a band called Days Ahead, which turned into Bones Brigade, but it was like this straight edge hardcore band. So it was like I remember there was a discussion about one of them. It's like, are you like Blake Ahead? Are you Blake X Ahead? Because the band was Days X Ahead. Deep conversations. We were children.
I never heard that. Children. I kind of always wanted to.
They are 1990s Boston straight edge hardcore.
Yeah. Were they fast at all? Were they like? I mean, Bones Brigade was really fast, but
they were they were faster than your average youth crew band, but they were like 10-yard fight-ish.
Okay.
Like just do that, sing along mosh part. song ends, you know.
Yeah, because there was that one dude. I think he was in the band in the beginning and left, but remember that group of kids? This is again going to be super regional, but whatever. There's a group of kids, everybody, that went to basement shows that called themselves the Mosh Hogs, that they were kind of like those Spock Rock, like locust haircut.
Yeah.
There were like 3 or 4 of them. They were nice kids. They were kind of obnoxious, but their hearts were in the right place. You know, at the time, a bunch of us were like, when a whole bunch of kids started dressing that way, a lot of people that didn't go that way were like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Because they, you know, that particular little subculture was known for being sassy. Like a lot of that retroactively, that little subset of hardcore has been called like sasscore now. And it was like, you know, the Locust and Crimson Curse and kind of a lot of that San Diego stuff. They were big into that, but some of those kids were kind of jerky sometimes. So there was like not really beef, but kind of like people being like, you know, they would get naked at shows, which nowadays would be like the most like that's not gonna fly thing like ever.
No,
you know, it's these like skinny vegan Spock looking kids like covered in fake blood and like moshing at show. Oh god,
wasn't there like a?
It was such a bummer.
I vaguely remember like an oversized stuffed animal that had like a shirt on it that said like Mosh Hogs on it or something like that.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, they were kind of like a little clique of dudes that were around in like I think 99, 2000 or whatever. And I don't know what any of them are up to now, but one of those guys was, I think, in Days Ahead, like at least in the beginning.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know.
Yeah. So
they were all BC High kids. There's the secret's out. They all went to a private high school.
Oh, okay. Yep, that tracks.
Yeah, they're all BC High kids that met at BC, because there was like a whole bunch of like straight edge hardcore bands that came out of BC High like during that era.
Where was that? Boston College High School?
Boston College High, yeah. It's a private high school that is like a funnel school to Boston College.
Oh, weird. Never heard of that.
Still around. Kids from down here, like where I live in the suburbs, that's like it's like a legacy school. So like if your dad went there, you'll go there. And it's in like I think it's in South Boston. It's not like a really hoity-toity private school, but it's a Catholic high school.
Huh. All right. I don't know the model.
It is.
Yeah, the model is very much. Well, also there was that whole era that kind of bled. It was adjacent to hardcore and definitely bled over into hardcore, but there was that big like Anglophile kind of scene that revolved around the Pill. That was like that Britpop dance night thing that was like super big, and a lot of people kind of, not all of them, but there were people that broke edge because they became part of that scene and got really into partying and stuff like that. You know,
it's like Paper.
Like
Paper and Start.
Yeah. So I think that like that whole like those kids were probably adjacent to that. I mean, they were all underage though at the time, but I think they probably had something to do with that. You know, that was like very much a big thing in Boston though, and I completely had no awareness of it when it was actually going on. Like it was completely alien to me.
At the time, I was like anti-dance club guy.
Yeah, like, for sure.
I was like, I'm not into that. Like a friend of mine was. I remember. I'll never forget this. This is like. It sounds awesome now. Like this is gonna. It's an interesting story. Like we were talking. Someone was like, a bunch of like we were like punk kids. Like I never was really, because I've always been like fat, so I can't wear cool clothes. But like everyone else I knew was like a spiky haired studded vest punk kid at the time, and some hardcore kids, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go to one of those nights." It was like Makeout Club or Start or Paper, whatever. And I was like, man, you know, I'm like, it's really not my thing. Like, I don't want, like, I'm just not into it. It's not my vibe. Like, it's something I just don't dig. And this other friend of mine, that punk kid, was like, he went fucking nuts. He goes, I don't go to dance nights. Do you know why? Because I'm a fucking punk. And he was like, and it was like this, like, we're like all like holed in some shithole apartment, like 15 kids in a living room, like arguing about going to like the club night that night. So, like, it was like at the time it was like big earth shattering, like, you know, fucking stuff.
Well, I remember those debates. Like, I'd like to think that a lot of them were at least kind of tongue in cheek, but like arguments over like punk fashion. I remember at the Danger House, which was the punk house that I semi lived at for a little bit, like a good hour or two discussion argument over whether or not it was acceptable to sew patches on your pants.
Yeah.
Because it was like the whole like pseudo crusty, like, the original crusties were broke and their clothes were rotting off of them. That's why they had patches covering their pants.
Yeah.
By the time that, and that was like late 80s Britain, and then it kind of came over to Minneapolis and New York and stuff via Nausea and Misery. By the time that fashion had kind of like been sucked into suburbia and like the edges of the mainstream, where there were like 14-year-old kids that lived with their very rich parents, doing that, it was like the kids that hung out in the pit that would have like several patches of the same bands. And it was just like, it was about volume of patches and like, perfectly clean. Yeah. Dental floss. Exact here. When we share that dental floss stitching, don't get me wrong. I was part of it. I'm not blameless in this. But there was just, I think it was Pittman and some other people were like, they're arguing for like, you shouldn't have patches on your pants. It's not punk. You look like a hippie, that kind of thing. It's like, oh man.
I remember that shit. And there's almost, you know what, the thing about like now, like you said before though, one of the best parts about it was like a lot of those conversations were like 100% just like dry humor ball busting. That like it's almost like wrestling. It was like kayfabe, where someone took a stance and they were just not going to back off that stance, even if they knew it was ridiculous. They would just go out of just sheer ignorance and for the sake of like being argumentative. They were just not going to give it up. They're going to tell you that patches on pants are fucking dumb, and no matter what you say, it's not going to make them cool. And if someone disagreed with them, that's worse because you just put 50 gallons of gas on a fire of just arguing for the sake of arguing.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like there was all these weird, because I don't think things were more fractalized than they were by like 97, 98. Between all the different subcultures, all the different tribes. Like, I don't think there was any actual real, much in the way of real beef, but in terms of like shit talk,
each other.
It was just, there was like that song Politicians by the Casualties that was like anti-crusty, despite the fact that the biggest crusty in the universe put their record out, like I'm trying to think what else. I know that there was beef between like the street punk kids that hung out on St. Mark's and the like traditional skins, like, and that actually did get violent on a few occasions, I guess, from what I've heard. I don't know. Could just be conjecture. So,
well, the thing that's wild about that time here in Boston, like I say Boston, I don't live in Boston, but in Massachusetts was, these scenes were like kind of like argumentative and would talk shit about each other or straight up ignore each other. But you had like every scene was huge. Like you had like really insanely nationally popular street punk bands, really insanely nationally popular like hardcore bands, all going on at the same time. But and Boston's a postage stamp, that, and they just never intersected with each other because they just wouldn't.
It blew my mind because
I just wouldn't do it.
Like I came from Syracuse where it was a very big hardcore scene, but it was a certain brand of hardcore. Like when I started going to shows the first couple of years, it was a lot of that new age records, like early Jade Tree. It was still hardcore, like the metalcore, metallic hardcore hadn't really come in yet. Like Earth Crisis was just starting, and All Out War arguably is like a pretty hardcore record. It's metallic, but it's not as metal as they got to be. So it was seeing a lot of bands like Four Walls Falling and Face Value and Endpoint and stuff like that. And then Bloodlet and Damnation AD came around and Earth Crisis blew up. But like it stayed within this vegan straight edge kind of context. And then and then we had our own punk scene too, that a few of us started at the local community center. But it was straight edge kids mostly that were putting on the shows. They were just kind of like tired of what was going on at the Lost Horizon, and they would still have metalcore bands playing with like the Disenchanted or whatever punk band, and then I would come to Boston where there was like no crossover. There was the big street punk thing, and then Krusty Craig put on basement shows, and that ranged from like crusty bands to screamo-ish stuff a little bit. Like Orchid played with His Hero Was Gone, for example, and then that was kind of separate, and then you had the Youth Crew thing, and they were they were pretty friendly with like Blood for Blood and would play with them, but they were kind of their own thing too. You know, you had like, Overcast, I think, was done by the time I came around. Maybe they were finishing up, but there was like Overcast and Diecast and that stuff that was like the kind of metallic shit, you know.
But they were like, they were huge in like touring, like Diecast. They were like a road band by then. They like, I only saw them a handful of times because when I think because they were already at the point where they were like, we're a band, we're from like Massachusetts or Boston, or aren't they from Western Mass? I think. What
they
anyways,
might have been originally.
They were just like, look, we're like a popular band and we're huge and we're on the road all the time, and our songs in a fucking snowboard video game. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and I mean,
they were trying to make a living out of it, which is cool.
Oh yeah. And there was crossover somewhat, like a little bit. Like, I mean, you know, Diecast would play with Reach the Sky and stuff, but you wouldn't really see, I don't feel like you'd see too much of the street punk, even the bigger bands, like playing with hardcore bands that often. You know, there was the Trouble, and there was like, who else? Like Fit for Abuse, who played out sporadically, who seemed to appeal to, you know, more than one group of kids. But all the scenes are so, I mean, yeah, like you said, yeah, they were all so huge, you know. So Ben asks, I don't think so, Ben. Like, I liked American Nightmare a lot, and I was like a crusty punk dude, but like not too many of my friends really cared for them. Like,
I know hardcore kids who didn't care for them.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not a big fan of them. Like, they just never really clicked with me. I like them more like stripped, like, I don't know, their like whole aesthetic wasn't really big with me and stuff like that. But the American Nightmare, when they blew up, it was weird because it kind of did what we were just talking about with punk and hardcore. Is like there was American Nightmare, and American Nightmare is like really like fanatic, crazy, diehard fan base. And then at the time, I was friends with the kids in like Cut the Shit and Bones Brigade, and those two hardcore groups did not gel.
Yeah,
they didn't.
And that was the other thing that started coming in as early, I want to say, as 98 or so, was just this revival of fast hardcore, like really fast hardcore, you know, like punk hardcore. And I think it was something that people had been wanting for a long time. And I mean, I think Fit for Abuse started, like probably 95 or 96 or something. Because I saw them in Albany, and I was like with Devoid of Faith and Drop Dead, and I was like, what is this? This sounds like Negative Approach. Like, I didn't have much context for that. Like again, pre-downloading stuff. Like, it was the only thing I could find, you know, and I was lucky enough to get that Rhino Records Faster and Louder hardcore punk comp that had SSD and Negative Approach and a bunch of stuff that I probably wouldn't have heard otherwise. And I managed to somehow get a copy of Total Recall by Negative Approach. So I knew them, and I knew early DRI, and I knew that more or less Fit for Abuse kind of was coming from that sort of sound. I hadn't heard any like raw Boston hardcore at all yet, other than one SSD song. Like, I hadn't heard, you know, Jerry's Kids or the FUs or anything like that, because I couldn't find the stuff anywhere. And I was just like, this is awesome. So it's no surprise that a bunch of bands that were coming from that kind of direction like really blew up, and that one of the epicenters of it was Boston. You had Cut the Shit, you know, and in Jersey you had Tear It Up. Cleveland, Nine Shocks Terror, you know, and it that was really cool because I felt like that did bring a lot of people together. That sort of Y2K thrash era stuff, that was like a really, really cool time to be around for sure.
And then we got Massachusetts, one of Massachusetts' greatest stripped down hardcore bands that existed for a million years, Out Cold. What's up, Crony?
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting. Yeah, Out Cold was around like in '89 or something.
They were just the same band the whole time. All these other bands were like changing sound. It's Out Cold, just like the most like, like, you know what an Out Cold record is, and they just kept on putting them out. And then like touring Russia. Never playing around here at all.
Well, I mean, if you can count on like one hand the bands that sounded like early 80s hardcore in the mid 90s before like that wave, you know, it was like Out Cold. There was that band, I think they were from Delaware. The Neighbors, they only had a couple of records, but they were really good. Out Cold. And there's a few other weird ones, you know, like Violent Society. If you go back and listen to them, they actually are pretty close to that. They just have a certain snottiness that keeps them kind of street punk. but like they're really fast. Like they have just as much American hardcore influence. I feel like I revisit them like once a year, and I'm like, yeah, it's still pretty good. H100s, you know, too.
Oh, yeah. There was a Violent Society. That last night at the show, we were talking to a couple different people, and you know, the Middle East is eventually going to be closing because they're going to be building a new venue or whatever. And there's a hot rumor floating around that there's going to be like one of the last shows of the Middle East is going to be like a mid '90s like punk jamboree with like all the Boston bands, and then like they were going to like call up like ask to see if Violent Society was going to we'll play, like come together and play it. Just trying to have like a Middle East 1997 show in 2023.
That's pretty funny. I mean, I still love Violent Society. I used to see them all the time. I used to see them in Albany a lot. But I wondered nowadays, like, because people don't look at them with rose-colored. I don't know. I feel like people don't really talk about them that much.
No, they got swallowed up by like the era, you know, abyss.
Yeah, which is too bad because I think they were good. Oxymoron too. That band was awesome.
Fucking love that band, dude. At this point in my life, I would like to see Toxic Narcotic live at least one more time. So to make it 1,000 times.
Yeah, I was in a band that was on. I was in a band that was on Bill Damon's label, Road Popsicle Records, and I've seen. It's funny that the two bands that I've seen the most, like over a dozen times each, are Earth Crisis and Toxic Narcotic.
Well, TN played every fucking show here, man. Like you could go a week. There was like a year where if you really like put the minimal amount of effort into it, you could see Toxic Narcotic like 4 times in a week. Like they just played everything, dude. And then remember that DVD that came out with them that was like they're on tour and they're in like California and there's like 500 people there going nuts for them, and it's like, yeah, I just saw them with like the same 15 kids like 2 days before that tour left because they just play they're so oversaturated here that it was just like weird to see them like headline a show.
Yeah, it was one of the last times we played when I was in Class Action. It was supposed to be a real big deal. Like TN headlined downstairs at the Middle East. And yeah, I mean, there was like maybe 50 people there. It was a bummer. I was like, why isn't this upstairs? That's sick. I wonder who played the death metal pig roast other than TN, because I remember some main death metal bands, but one was called Blood Red Thrust. But I saw a bunch of like old like DM bands like the first year I lived in Maine, which was right after me living in Boston. I just said, but I was in Class Action. We had a
Dual
demo.
singers, right?
2 singers. The previously mentioned gentleman Steve Quicks was the other singer before I joined, but it was, you know, classic 90s crust, big dog, little dog vocals. Every song on our 7-inch was ripping off a different band. It's like, here's the Spaz song, here's the Disrupt song, here's the Dystopia song, here's the Iconoclast song. Oh, Molested Senses. I remember them. I saw them. Okay, so I saw that band. I think it was the same band in a small, like, I don't even think it was technically a bar. I think it's more of a saloon in backwoods Maine. And it was like 6 or 7 dudes like headbanging and going for it. There wasn't a stage though. It was like they played in front of a pool table that had one of those big like ornate blown glass like lamp glass things hanging over the pool table, and all these like older headbangers were freaking out so hard that a bunch of people like had to like get in the way and protect the glass thing hanging over. Anyway, it's a very Maine metal experience.
That's awesome. That story just drew the picture in my head.
Yeah, it was rad. It was a good time. But so I mean, I hope there continues to be like good culture and a good scene in Boston. It's cool that Man Ray's back. I'm worried, you know, there's been so many places. COVID certainly didn't help. I think COVID just kind of pushed gentrification along a little bit, but the loss of Great Scott and
the practice spaces.
Yeah, that was a huge loss. That really sucks.
supposedly the Middle East is getting rebuilt with like a venue on the first floor and apartments on the top. But I mean, who's gonna pay top dollar to live above a fucking venue?
Yeah,
I don't know, man. I don't
it just
know.
seems like I can just imagine like some like I don't know, almost millionaire influencer, annoying person being like, "Oh, how hip and cool! I'll live above the Middle East," and then complain, like calling the cops on the club or something that. You know, it doesn't sound great.
It's the worst too because there's a lot of kids that come from affluent families that are going to college here. So it's like,
sure.
you know, or like a lot of times there's a lot of people from out of the country who come from like literally royalty, like wherever they're from. And they come to Boston and live in like a fucking $10,000 a month loft. And just I can't see them coming downstairs and seeing like, you know, Opie shitface on the corner screaming about skinheads. and be like overtly excited about that.
Yeah.
This is the most
still doing that, huh?
Yeah. This is the most Massachusetts episode of it. Like, I'm sure anyone from New England is probably like enjoying this. Anyone else is probably like, "What the fuck are they talking about?
Who are these fucking people?"
They're all real, baby.
I know, like, I listen to. Well, I know that I listen to like a few podcasts that I listen to almost for the regional talk. Like when they start talking about Albany on Axe to Grind or Overnight Drive or any of those podcasts, I'm like, yes, talk about the QE2 some more.
Yeah.
I've been there. Awesome. So, anything planned? Any relaxing evening? You going to Target today or anything?
No, we went yesterday.
All right.
I went to Market Basket and Target yesterday. You go to Target first to be chill, and then you go to Market Basket to have a fucking mental breakdown.
I am so glad there's no Market Basket analog down here. We have Publix, two really nice, chill grocery stores that are like a quarter of a mile away. They're like across the street from each other. It's ridiculous. We have a Publix, and there's a local chain called Harris Teeter.
Oh, really?
And it's across the Carolinas in the South, I think. But Harris Teeter is like almost as good as Wegmans. So
yeah, I've been to a Publix in Florida. And I thought it was kind of like a Wegmans light. Like they had a deli, if I remember correctly.
They're both they're really nice. It's just something, I don't know what it is about Market Basket. I don't know why what's up with the architecture and the infrastructure, why they make it so claustrophobic, why like
dude, people need to go. If someone's watching this and is some sort of like social scientist, please investigate fucking Market Basket in Massachusetts, because they're doing shit at those, man. There's like something they do there, like they set it up a certain way, and you know they're doing it. They hired some sort of like genius with mental games to set that place up, because it's just set up so weird. But they're doing it on part. Like I did that Facebook post about the checkout aisles. They're literally like you're like, it's like you're being like herded, and it's like, why are they like this? It's like, because I'm telling you, it's fucking with your brain, man.
Okay, for people that non-regional people, non-local people, I'm not local anymore, but for people that aren't from Mass, imagine an Aldi's, but somebody goes, and they have big ones. Like there's the Market Basket in Chelsea and the Market Basket in Burlington are huge, but they still arrange all the aisles so they're like suffocating.
They're like one, you can fit like one cart, and of course people are all bumping into each other and like, because it's Massachusetts, so you know as well as I do, they're just pissed. They're just looking for someone to brush into them and be like, "Fuck you," you know.
I think they're just trying to harness negativity. It's like the ooze from Ghostbusters 2 is like running underneath it, and it's going to be used for some nefarious purpose. It's real creepy pasta. That's what's going on.
We were there yesterday, and Jen was off with Leo doing shopping, and I was like, I'm gonna grab a slice of pizza from like the pizza fucking counter, and they have like a little like chill area or whatever to go sit and eat, like, you know, you can eat your lunch from the deli. So I'm sitting there eating a slice of pizza, and it's right by a register, and I see some lady just nail another lady with her cart in a line, and they start like going back and forth with each other, and one of them, she had like an accent. I think it sounded like it was almost like Russian. It was like an accent, and she was like telling her like, I don't know what your problem is, and this lady in the most like New England like 2 packs of Merits a day, like
Merits.
scratch ticket dust voice goes, "Speak English, honey." And I'm just sitting there like eating my slice of pizza, being like, "No, this is fucking the culture of the fucking suburbs of Mass." Like,
Yeah, total ignorant. Yeah, I
just unbridled, unchecked, never questioned, just
xenophobia.
ignorant. And the thing too is that so they built one at like 2 towns over from us, and like you could go like Christmas morning at 4:30 in the morning, and it's fucking packed. Like,
Yeah,
it's like what the hell? Like, is there any like? There's no time you can go where it's easy. It's always busy, always.
yeah, it's terrible. I don't. And the thing is, like, Stop and Shop, which is the main competitor, is way more expensive and like not much of a nicer grocery store. It doesn't really have a better selection or anything. But I would be like, all right, I'm going to Stop and Shop. I'm going to whatever Trader Joe's. Like, I'm not gonna save like. And that was like when I was a student and had no money. When I was like back in X-ray school and stuff, and I had like a budget of like $30 a week for food. You know, I'd be like, well, I'm gonna get one less item because I just will not deal with Market Basket.
We have a Shaw's 1 minute up the street from us, and we drive a town over because it's just but we save a lot of money. You know what it's like. I have a 3-year-old, dude. We got to go buy like pouches and other like fucking shit that like
Gotta
it's
get
literally like $1 more at Shaw's.
25. Yeah. Wow. All right. That's substantial. Yeah.
Yeah. Jen does like the deep food shopping research, like the most bang for our buck, if you will. Target Circle's a big thing in this house. Like, you know.
So one thing, kind of switching gears here. You've been really into buying and collecting movies. Past year or two.
That was there something thing.
Is a COVID thing? I was going to say, like, what exactly sparked that?
So, like, I've always been into movies. Like, even when I was like, I would say before I fell really heavily like into punk and hardcore, I was like, I liked movies. Like, I would go to the movies. Like, I had an uncle who passed away when I was younger, but like he lived in Maryland. We went to visit him. I was probably like 8 or 9. He showed us Taxi Driver. You know, like it's just like I just kind of got a thing like a you know for it, no, it was Simon. Simon did it. But like I've always been in the movies, even like not even necessarily like hard like low budget stuff, but like I like, you know, dumb comedies. Like I was really into Adam Sandler when he was popular when I was a young kid. That was like a big thing. I saw all the movies. I saw all the Kevin Smith movies. I would see those when they would come out, when he had that run with like Dogma and all those, and then all the why am I spacing on his name? The super quirky movies. Anderson.
Oh, Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson, like all the Wes Anderson movies, and then like horror movies, of course, and like RoboCop, and like the dumb 80s action movies like Rambo, like all the Predator, all those. And then when like COVID came along, you know, like I was in a weird situation with COVID because I continued to work because I worked for a Department of Public Works. We didn't shut down, but my son was also 3 months old. So like it was just, and like my wife was working from home. So I just had like infinite free time because, well, not free time, but my wife would be working. Our schedules are, I work 5 a.m. till 1. She works until like 6:30, 5:30, 6:30 at night. So it was like, I got home at 1 o'clock and I was dad duty. My son was like, still had steam coming off him. He was so fresh out the oven. So he couldn't do anything. Like he couldn't so I'd just be like, oh, I'm going to start watching movies again. And then I'm like, what's this like boutique? Like, oh, this, and the next thing I know, I was just buying Blu-rays. And I had disposable income because I was working and the fucking world was shut down. So basically all I was doing was food shopping. Like I wasn't going out. I wasn't going to see shows. I wasn't like, just,
right.
Like, so then I was like, I just started buying. And then the government gave us money and then we got taxes. And then I was working overtime somehow during COVID. And I just had the only expenses we had was like our usual monthly expenses and like food shopping. And that was pretty, like, I wasn't spending money on gas. We weren't spending money on daycare or any of that because everything was shut down. So I just went nuts and started buying and like kind of fell into it. And Simon did help. I was watching Simon's channel because a lot of stuff he likes, I like too, but I was just kind of out of, and like Eric too. I was just kind of like out of the loop a little bit because I just hadn't I'd kind of like fallen off like just buying movies and stuff. So I just kind of got back into like I didn't know what Vinegar Syndrome was. When I found out, I loved it and started buying shit from them. I didn't know about like some of the other like Severin. I didn't know who they were for sure. I started buying stuff from them, and now I'm just like full on. Like I've been buying more movies than records lately, to be honest. But that goes back to me just owning a ton of records. Like I don't really need, like, there's tons of movies I don't have that I need. There's not a ton of records I don't have that I need. I don't really need them, but you know what I mean.
I know.
Need them emotionally.
Those slots to fill. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I love cinema. I'm a man of culture and taste. I love cinema. But I have this sort of thing where I just haven't been bitten by that bug. I have, but I haven't. Like I was not to be, I try not to be like one of those format nerds, and it's only if they're really cheap. But I do like having my big CRT TV and VHS library.
Yeah.
And I've done that like a couple of times where I've gone in and blown a couple $100 on eBay on a whole bunch of VHS tapes. But I think I'm done doing that. Like I'm kind of out of room, and I'm just kind of like, I think I have everything I want. But we have Shudder, and lately we've been watching all the Joe Bob Briggs Last Drive-In stuff. Because there's a lot of like boxes to be checked off. Like a lot of older horror movies for me, I get bored. I start staring at my phone. Like I have a terrible attention span, like most people nowadays. But with a horror host, like, giving you facts like every quarter of the movie, especially that guy's been doing it for years. He's super charismatic. Like, cool. So like we watched Castle Freak last night. Like I've tried watching that before and gotten bored early in the beginning and just turned it off. I'm like, oh, that was very disturbing. It turned out to be a pretty decent flick, So I've been watching more movies lately. But it's one of those deals where I'm good with collecting. I have all the classic movies that I grew up with where I'm like, I was always been kind of like a sword and sorcery kind of guy. So I have like Lady Hawk and Willow and, Beastmaster and all that kind of stuff. Like, stuff that you would consider to be like something I should own. I probably own it. I was a big Terry Gilliam guy, like at least his early flicks. So like I definitely want to own all that stuff, like pretty much up to 12 Monkeys. I do need 12 Monkeys. Now that I think of it, that's it though. But
I think that just got or we're supposed to get like a nice redone bonus featured alternative art release, or it might have got scrapped. I think 12 Monkeys.
I've noticed that. I was looking at the number of people watching, and during the Stop and Shop versus Market Basket conversation, it dipped down to about 14. But now that we're talking about horror movies, we're up at about 21.
Yeah, no one wants to get in this heavy debate of regional supermarkets.
I don't know why. Why would we?
Not to go back to it, but if you don't live in this state, you have to come here and just set foot in a Market Basket, and everything we said would make sense. You would totally understand. It's social and psychological warfare. Anyway. Yeah. But well, the thing about it too that I've like been fortunate about up here is I buy like the expensive nice Blu-ray stuff that comes out, like if I have money. Like I'm not putting myself in debt. It's usually just like, I have money. But I've been really fortunate of stumbling across some like really cool like original DVDs of like, they're not like rare, like they're rare, but they're not, I'm not going to be able to like sell them and buy a Ferrari. But it's like I've been like finding like used DVDs at like Newbury Comics and Nord where I don't think anyone cares that they're there for like $3-4. But these are ones that sell for like $15 on eBay. But I'm getting them for
really surprised
$3, $4, $5, $6.
Huh? They must have loosened up their stuff, because I used to work at the warehouse and I used to work in used, and I eventually got the job as somebody who would help adjust the pricing for stuff to be uploaded onto Amazon and put aside for eBay if it was like really nice. And they used to be really on top of the pricing for that stuff. I'm kind of surprised that they aren't.
Someone I think unloaded a collection directly into the Norwood store, because I didn't go for a while, and then I went and they had a wall and it was like horror and it was DVDs. And I'm like, this wasn't here the last time I was here. And it was like banger, like obscure, semi hard to find, weird version. And it was like 50 of them. And like you could tell they probably came from the same collection, that's a little like I call that like record store archaeology. Like when you go into a used store and you're going through like a used section and you're just like, I don't know what it is, I can't tell you how, but you can just know it all came from the same place. Like these were all came from the same. Like no one can know. Like 10 random people didn't come in here and drop off 10 random horror DVDs. These all had to come in a lot. And that's happened to me there a couple times where I've gone and it's like I find like I found newer stuff on Blu-ray that's like, again, these aren't like, you know, I have to work overtime to pay for, but it's like stuff that's $30, $35 new, used usually 20, 25, and I'm going, and they came out like in the last couple years, and I'm getting them for 13. So why not, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And then I forced my wife to watch them, and she's super happy about it.
That was when I did most of my DVD purchasing, actually, was when I worked at the warehouse, because I had a 20% discount. And I would see that stuff come through used, and I'd be like, okay, that's a classic, you know, Conan the Barbarian, whatever. I need to own that. You know. Oh, they got the 2-disc edition of Street Trash. Perfect. And there's still stuff that haunts me to this day for not grabbing it, because I was either being too cheap or didn't put money aside. Like, wouldn't have been that expensive really if I just like didn't buy as many records that week or something instead. Like the Tomb of the Blind Dead Coffin box set. It was like, I think like after discount, probably like $30 or something.
It's big money now.
Coffin Joe box set. Could have grabbed that. You know, like didn't do that. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of those too myself. Like records I've picked up and put down like a bunch of times, and I'm like, oh, it'll be here next time. Or like I'm in a distro and I'm like, oh, I'm going to a show next week. This guy will probably be here with the distro. I can grab it. Then gone, never seen again. Or like, and like, I'm also a big fan of like I think people might be similar with this approach. Like I have lists of movies and or records I want that I could probably just buy online any day. But I specifically put them in a list that I will only buy them if I find them in the wild. And that's it.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of those. And I've been actually like not knock on this composite desk. I've been somewhat lucky with like I've been finding stuff in the wild lately. Like, and I'm kind of like not. And again, it's not like crazy like earth shattering ones, but it's like, oh, a copy of like Trancers on Blu-ray. Like, you know, like I didn't think I would see this anywhere.
Terry and Michelle in the Newberry office. Maybe. I'm really bad with names. And that was the one thing about the working in the warehouse was there was all of the serfs. You'd go in, there would be a shipping area where like the trucks would pull in and people would unload all the pallets. And then directly next to it, there was the used area, which was like the most like gross orphan part. Like everybody that worked in used like smelled bad. It's just like it's very just all the derelicts, you know, like worked in used because we'd go through and like have to like look at discs to make sure they weren't too scratched and like sort through. It was just a mess. And then like towards the back was like the internet stuff that was like, you know, people filing stuff to be like sold on Amazon. And I started in used and ended up over there pricing stuff. And then downstairs was all the new stuff. So there was like CDs and DVDs was Trend, or CDs. There were CDs and DVDs and then Trend. And Trend was all the crap, like all the stuffed animals, the fart boxes, and the, you know, everything. I can only imagine how big that's like probably the entire warehouse now. But then like back upstairs, there was like the used, and then there was like a wall, and you'd go around, and that was like the buyers and you know, the people that basically like worked in the office, and you didn't really hang out with those folks that much. Like there was like I don't know, I might have met Michelle at some point. Like I've met people there, but I mean, we're talking. I mean, I started working there right when I moved back to Boston in like late 2006. And I was in the warehouse until 2009. It was like 2.5 years or something like that. And then I 3-ish years. And then I went to the Burlington store and worked there for another couple of years when I was in X-ray school. And then I got the hell out of there. Because there's nothing worse than working retail. There's not, even if that was the thing. Everybody was like, oh, you work in a record store? I'm like, well, I work at Newberry Comics. It's like, oh, that must be so fun. No, it's not. Like, really. Maybe you still have to deal with the public, and like, it just, like, just every new rule that they brought on us, like, you have to greet every single person. Okay. You have to get everybody to sign up for our email list. Everybody already has. Like
I've been asked, you know how many times I've been asked to sign up for the email list? Like, it's like, and I look at me like, dude, you rang me up, like, because I used to go to one pretty frequently because it was close. It's like, dude, I come in here like I talk to you. You know how many times, like, I'm like, dude, you don't have to sell me. I get that you have to do stuff and it sucks, but like, you can skip it with me. Like, I spend money here regularly. Because the one in Braintree was awesome. It wasn't in a mall. It was outside a mall. It was in a strip mall, and it was awesome. It was huge. The people who bought there bought the coolest shit. So I'd go there, like, literally. I used to go there once a week and just buy like new releases and stuff. I used to buy Maximum Rock and Roll there the first week of the month. I'd go and buy it. You know, so it's like I kind of got a little bit of a rapport with the staff because I was just always there, and like you know, I spent money. I wasn't just milling around the store all day. Like they knew I was going to buy something. I rarely left with nothing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the first, like, it was weird because the first year that I worked at the store in Burlington, it was awesome. Probably because my boss was really cool. He played bass in that really chaotic, like grind sort of metalcore-ish band Watchmaker. Okay. And, he was about my age now, I think, or maybe a year or two younger, but he was like a mid-40s metalhead dude who just like was really, really funny. He was like pretty like nuts in a really good way, just like super enthusiastic, really into music, like didn't take anything too seriously. And then the guy that came after him was a nice enough guy, but definitely was like into company policy and enforcing it. And it was just kind of like, I make like less than $8 an hour. You know, and I get nothing but abuse from like sport, like kids from Billerica all day. Like I'm not doing anything other than the bare minimum. Like pay me a living wage, and I'll actually.
You're not Pat Newberry Comics, like.
You know, I just and it's like you're supposed to like help prevent theft by like following people around and not doing anything.
See, that shit's like, brutal. I would never do that.
And constantly asking people if they need help. And it's just like, what am I supposed to do? Because there was a guy and it was just instinct. Like, and I didn't know anything to the company, but it was a dude who ran out with a stack of Blu-rays like this. And I chased him just out of instinct. I was just like, get back here. And a couple of dudes that were like, I guess they were a window installation team from some company. They're all wearing tan, like matching, tennis shirts and golf shirts. And they all like ran after the dude and tackled him for me. Apparently, like I'd never seen these guys before. They weren't really like regular customers or anything. They were just like, they were getting something at Dunkin' Donuts and saw me chasing after a shoplifter. And they all ran after and tackled the dude and brought me all the DVDs back. And I still got reprimanded for chasing after the guy because there's a no chase policy, which I guess it's all legal. I get it. Like you don't want to get sued and it's all stuff related to that, but it was just funny, you know?
I get to, I heard through the grapevine that I think it was like the last like maybe 3 or 4 years, might be a little bit longer, that they had like a massive, like wild, like, I don't know if people left or chose to leave. Like it's all like new. And you can kind of tell when you're in the stores, there's just like, there's a different, I've used this word a couple times. So it makes me sound like I'm like a new age guy, but there's just like a vibe that's just not there anymore. It's just like, you can tell there's like certain new rules and like people are like just acting, you know, it's not as relaxed as it used to be, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you got to figure like they're trying to stay afloat. They're a brick and mortar, like being a brick and mortar of any stripe, regardless of what you're selling, is like kind of a tough road to hoe nowadays. You know, it depends. Like I would go to the North Shore Mall and it would be hopping and there weren't any empty storefronts. So there's still a need or people still want to go to malls and stuff, but it's just tougher nowadays with, you know, you can get something at your door if you order it a day before, and you know, it's just how it is. And I mean, I think like Newberry Comics has been pretty smart. Like they've moved to smaller locations where the rent's less and they're selling more, you know, streetwear stuff and even more toys. And, you know, they were smart enough to like get they always sold vinyl, even when it was like the least popular format, but they got back in on the vinyl stuff, you know, and seem to be doing well. And honestly, you know, despite any, like, I have no sour grapes. Like, there were times when I worked for that company where it wasn't the most fun, but they always were all right by me. You know, it's just the nature of the beast to not be paying people a lot for retail. It's just the way things are.
And you are speaking with paying people. You are speaking to the right person to talk about payment, because I am a union man, and I can get, we can do a whole side podcast about contract negotiations and pay scales, because that's what that's another part of I spend a lot of my free time doing. Like, so,
I mean, I don't know. Like, it just, what sucked was I was making a certain, like, almost a livable way, almost, at the warehouse, and then I went to I went out to the store, and they're like, okay, you're making this amount now, and I was like, I hate this. You know? So I don't know. Maybe I would like to think that the guys that run that company, I don't know how old they are at this point. They seem like relatively chill, progressive guys. You'd think that they would do more, but I don't know. I
think eventually what's going to happen with them is, because of the way the world exists now, is you're going to have like the Norwood type store that's really big, and they're just going to cut down to like mega stores. You know what I mean? Have like Bull Moose. That's what Bull Moose is. Bull Moose does, like, they do well because they're kind of the same store. They sell a lot more like paper, like books and movies, way more movies than Newbury Comics does. But there's only like 5 or 6 of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many Newbury Comics are there? There's probably like, there's got to be
quite a few.
I mean, I can look it up. There's a few. It's got to be in the 20s, right? Probably, you would think.
Something like that, yeah. Because I mean, I don't know which ones have closed and which ones.
Some have, though. They've closed a bunch, but I think they've opened some too.
Yeah, some have moved location. Like the Burlington one used to be in a plaza, now it's in the Burlington Mall.
Yeah,
you know, stuff like that. It's smaller. You know, same thing with the one in Peabody used to be its own storefront and is now in the mall. You know, there's that kind of Braintree. Yeah, I mean,
the one on Newbury Street moved to a smaller one. They moved out of that spot, moved out 3 or 4 spots down into a smaller location.
Yeah, I could imagine, like, Newbury Street's so expensive. Like,
and the garage is closing in Harvard, so they're gonna really.
I thought it already closed.
No, it might have. I haven't been there, but it's that's all being gentrified. But they're gonna rip that. So I don't even know if they're gonna come back, because where are they gonna go? I think it's gonna be apartments. So
yeah. I mean, it's just the way things are. I mean, and it's, you know, I mean, in a way, maybe that's better for some local businesses. Because, I mean, remember, you could get anything at Newbury back in the day, but I remember a lot of people kind of turning up their noses at Newbury because it was somehow, I guess, you know, compared to like an independent record store that only has one location, it was kind of corporate, you know. Yeah. I think a lot of people also poo-pooed it because they sold toys and sold, like, you know, knickknacks and stuff like that. But I mean, you know, it kind of makes things a little less competition maybe for independent stores, I guess. You know, I mean, maybe more business for Armageddon, you know? Yeah,
I was gonna say, because in Harvard, you got Armageddon, like, what? It's like a 5-minute walk up the street from the Newbury Comics.
Yeah.
But I would always do both. Usually Armageddon first, to be fair, and then, you know, just swing by, see what's there. You know, and then you got Providence too. But you got good record stores down. You got one of the big boys down by you for
I got Sorry State. Sorry State isn't even like a big store by any stretch. It's not like a hole in the wall or anything like that, but
like a punk and hardcore, like centralized store. Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely, I mean, that Vinyl Conflict, you know, there's all the amoebas and stuff out on the West Coast, you know. There's all the shops in Portland and Seattle too, which are pretty mind blowing. Some of the places I went to when I visited Eric there. But yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, Sorry State is great. It's no slouch, that's for sure. If I had my druthers, I'd wish that they have a dedicated metal section that's decent, and they have a big used section that's punk and metal.
Yeah,
that's pretty huge. And there's always really great deals in there and a lot of good stuff. It would be cool to see a bigger metal section there, but I'm hoping that, like, maybe someday that's where I'll come in with my store.
Yeah.
You know? But we'll see. That's going to be a little while. Why?
because they do well. I'm assuming. I mean, because they've been around for a long time. They put out a lot of releases too.
Yeah. Sorry State does. So does Armageddon. So yeah. I'm always like Sorry State's internet presence is like super clean and professional. It has the like little pop-up thing that messages you and everything. I'm like, wow.
And it gives you like if you go to check, is that the one that when you go to check out, it gives you a pop-up window that's like, we have these for sale if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Like, AKA, we have like 25 copies of this that we don't want anymore, so you can get it for $2.
There's a bunch of there's at least a few more shops that I haven't even had a chance to check out in the Raleigh area yet. I've been here for a year, but the best ones are a Nice Price, which I've talked about, and Sorry State. School Kids, kind of so. And then the Poorhouse, which is a venue and record store. They have some good stuff. But again, like, I'm having incredibly like unreasonably high standards for record stores. So it's not,
well, we're spoiled. We've been spoiled.
We're very much spoiled by Armageddon. There's not too many stores I can think of that I'd like to go to more than Armageddon.
Everything about Armageddon is cool. Like what they have, but just like, it's just cool. You go in there, it's awesome. The staff is awesome. They'll throw you recommendations of fucking. It's a very cool spot.
It is, yeah. I never got to go to that. I think Peter Mikanovic was working there for a little bit. There was that newer record store was it Brighton or Brookline? I can't even remember what it's called, but they seemed like pretty punk and hardcore leaning too.
Oh, is that the one that well, there's the Cooch took over a store.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you remember? Do you ever go to Blue Note Records? It's now called Big Dig, and Cooch runs it. It's Cooch and this kid that's a younger kid. They took it over. Huh. I feel so. Every time I see him, I apologize to him because I haven't been yet. They've been open for like.
Where is it?
It's on Mass Ave.
Oh, is it? Is it on Mass Ave and Blue Note? Is it on Mass Ave in Cambridge?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. I remember that store. I never went in there.
Yeah, it's called Big Dig now, and it's like it's dudes running it are. It's kind of I think it's flying a little bit under the radar right now, but like the people involved in running that know what they're doing, and if you go in there, you'll probably find sick shit for sure. I guarantee you'll walk out with a stack. You'll walk out with a stack.
See, that's the thing that like I need to understand or figure out about that piece of like running a record store. I have no idea how to do that other than like, I guess going on social media and asking people, like getting good used records, like buying people's collections and stuff. I don't know how to go about doing that. I know that's like a big key of doing it, but I have no idea like how. Is there somebody that facilitates that's like has a Rolodex of people like selling stuff?
Well, the thing with I think one of the speed bumps like anyone would have with buying someone's personal collection is like you might be dealing with someone that has a different idea of what the value of what they're selling you.
That's the problem.
And they're going to be like standoffish about it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with buying records in general, because I remember that, again, going back to when I worked in Newbury, I didn't have a say in what we paid for CDs or DVDs or any used stuff that people brought in. I scanned it and it told me on the computer how much I was to give them, and they would be like, but I paid this much. And I was like, yeah, but come on, like, you know how capitalism works, right? Like we have to make a profit. We can't pay what it's worth and value you paid. We have to give you almost nothing so we make money. Like, come on. This is
that's a good question. That's a good thing though, because I wonder if they pay into some sort of like database that's just like a Discogs, but for like resellers, where there's just like the price point for stuff, Yeah,
I know. Because I mean, whenever I brought stuff into Armageddon, I would always bring in stuff in bulk when I went to Armageddon, like 2 milk crates, CDs, vinyl. I'd bring like a duffel bag of shirts, and just it would be like usually like a spring purge, and like Ben always gave me a fair price. I always left with a couple of Bonzers, but I mean, it's so funny to me because these would be like full grown adults that seemed reasonably intelligent, at least sometimes. And they'd be like, well, that's not what I paid for it. It's like, of course it isn't.
You're missing the concept of selling of reselling back a UCD to a chain store, buddy. It's like going to GameStop and thinking you're gonna get $60 for like Madden 09. Like, you know what I mean? Not happening, dude. Like,
FIFA 13 isn't
yeah,
gonna.
yeah. Or you go like a game so old, everyone in it's retired.
Yeah.
Actually, I found a Bonzer yesterday at Noobs. Hold on.
Bonds are at the news. Oh yeah. There is that sign. Hardcore BHC. All right, nice.
Yeah. You like that? Hey, check it out. Hold on. I don't know if it'll work. Yeah.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah. My brother-in-law bought me that for Christmas. So in the Norwood store, they have like a special, like expensive section in the corner. And I saw this from across the store, dude. It's the original press Crucifix LP.
That's how much
like,
you pay
you
for
don't
that.
expect to find shit like this on Newbury Comics.
Yeah.
I paid $60 for it.
I mean, I have it, but you know.
I don't have one. This thing never pops up. Where'd you get yours?
Oh, dude. I mean, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago when that wouldn't have been going for that much. It was probably half that, and I think it's just Discogs or something.
Yeah, these things like never pop up in the wild. And it even got me more excited when I pulled it out when I bought it. It was owned by someone who knew what it was because it's in a static.
Nice.
It's in a legit sleeve, so they knew it wasn't like some random punk record worth like $2.
Yeah. I'm so bad about that with like my old press records. They're all in like paper sleeves that came with them.
I usually pull them out and put them in the back. But yeah, for like you don't usually find stuff of this nature there. So
no, I wouldn't think so. That's crazy. Did you ever read that? What's that?
Hawkeye Jason saw this from across the room, and I was like
it's a pretty iconic cover. Did you ever read that article by Mark McKay about like whatever Doc Dart was up to at the time? This was like 15 years ago or something. He that guy sadly had some pretty severe mental health issues.
Yeah.
It was even longer. I think it was post 9/11, fresh post 9/11, like early 2000s, because he like, I can't remember what the exact phrase was, but he like painted the front of his house like we deserve 9/11, this basically like right after it happened.
Yeah.
And there was just like dried eggs and broken windows from people like very angry, like throwing stuff through. And apparently he wasn't doing, you can imagine, I mean, like listen to the Crucifix record, like that dude's got some problems for sure.
I mean, the Jarvis set.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. But I didn't know there's a demo, like the I Am the Establishment demo previous to that Biff at Das Bootleg made copies of. It's great. It's super. There's a handful of songs that didn't make it to the record, I think, and it's super raw and fast. It's really, really good.
You have to find that. I'll put that on the list. But I haven't even played it yet. I'm gonna do that post stream. I'll throw that on. Have you heard this thing yet? Not to get
No. I'm gonna be getting that for the distro for sure. No, I haven't heard it yet. I'm sure it's great.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that Dave Ackerman's done that hasn't been pretty friggin' good.
And it's a dude from Look Back and Laugh too, I think, and maybe someone else.
I think there's more than one. Yeah, there's more than one Look Back and Laugh member in it. I'm pretty sure. But no, I've heard nothing but good things about that. And didn't they had a 7-inch before?
Yeah, they had a couple 7-inches, I think.
Okay.
I believe one might have been self-released. One came out on a label from why am I complete? I actually interviewed them for like one of the Boston Hassle things. I'm drawing a complete blank. Fuck. They're like from Dayton. And they had a tape, I believe. But it's Dave Ackerman, so all those Tear It Up guys. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, because he did that Splitting Headache band that like after Tear It Up that was pretty good. And I don't think people really ever even talked about that.
He did another band too, before this one that just put out one LP from they're because he's in Texas now, I believe.
Yeah, he was living in Austin last time I saw him.
Yeah, but I think he's
over 10 years ago.
I think he's like an animal control officer or something.
He is, because I haven't seen him. I don't know if he
works in animal control.
Yeah, I don't know if he does the social media thing or I haven't seen him on social media in a while, but he was posting like him, pictures of himself in his outfit and like
saving
like, oh, there's a pit bull I rescued and like all this other stuff.
Yeah,
so
like animal rescue
really cool.
stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, he
Yeah,
was in a band called Obedience. If you guys check that out, I think they just put out an LP that you can most likely, I think, find probably in a cutout bin because I think it was just a one-off band.
Yeah.
But if you dig any Dave Ackerman project, the Obedience LP is sick.
There's been so many like great hardcore records come out in the past 15 years that I feel like there's just so much coming out that a lot of stuff kind of doesn't get talked about as much, especially if it's like a bunch of guys from like really well-known notable bands and they did this one record and then did something else and whatever. But like this record, this Constant Fear record, Drone Kill. Have you heard this?
No.
It's on Painkiller. It's great. It's I think guys from Knife Fight and some other people that I can't remember. But yeah.
I just got a Knife Fight demo that I bought, and I didn't pay a ton of money for it, but I paid like, and it's like 3 minutes long. It's like I think I paid like $25 for it, and it's like 3 minutes. There's like 10 songs with 3 minutes of music on it.
Nice. Yeah, this came out in 2014. It's really good.
I got the new Conjure. Did you get this thing yet?
No, I need to pick that up. I actually emailed them about carrying stuff, and they're like, we don't have enough copies for wholesale, but you can, if you want to carry the demos, we have demos. And I was like, yeah, cool. Let me know. And they haven't gotten back to me yet. But I do need to order a copy of that because I'm sure it's great.
I think they've been having a lot of like supply chain issues with their releases where they're just not getting them, and then it's not their fault. It's just like they're just not like they can't like get them quick enough, or it takes
especially the vinyl with that was the last one, right? That seemed like
a year,
real nightmare. I mean, a lot of people have like. There's also, I think it was that Massacred 7-inch that was supposed to come. Hey, buddy. Hey, Leo.
Okay, you can go now.
That Massacred 7-inch was supposed to come out a couple of years ago, I guess, or at least it was recorded 2 years ago. That's because of COVID and supply chain shit. There's like, oh, this is like frozen in time, frozen in amber.
For this, the new Conjure, Wayne said they are doing records for it, but I don't think they're going to do a pre-order until they're like a couple months out or even in hand, because that must have been such a nightmare. Because it took over a year, and people were probably hammering him so hard about it. And Wayne's not one for fuckery. Like I'm sure he was at the end of his rope with people asking where it is. I can guarantee you he probably was. So even these were delayed though. He's like, we're only going to do CDs now, blah blah blah. And these were like a month late. But it's not his fault. I mean, I get it. I get it. It wasn't like he was sitting on a box of these laughing. He didn't have them. So like, what is he gonna do? Like wave a magic wand and create them? Like he's waiting on them. Like,
like it's still happening. It seems to be happening less, but it still seems not great. Like there's that Flower record was supposed to come out on Profane Existence like 2 weeks ago, and they put out something on Instagram saying, "Oh, it's going to be a 2 to 4 week delay." I'm like, because I pre-ordered that, and I want to carry it too because it's amazing. It's really, really, really good.
Well, I've won now the Raw Brigade LP that's supposed to come out. That's been almost a year. No idea where that is. They did a record release show with no records. And I know it's not them. I know it's not them. It's not the label. It's just they everything's just too many bottlenecked,
Too many copies of Abbey Road that nobody wants or needs.
Yeah, and Adele. Hold on, let me grab something else. Did
you? What's up? What's up, everybody?
Sorry.
Hey.
It's like I got the new High Command last Sunday.
I got the CD. It's great.
Yeah, we were joking around because it's on Steel Records, aka Steel Color Vinyl, aka Gray. I also got the new Big Laugh. Have you heard these guys yet?
No, I haven't. You were
Yeah.
I saw you posted something about them on Instagram, and
Yeah.
I think it was Jesse Gasface was like, "Yo, that rules." And I'm like, okay, well, two people whose opinions I respect. I'll have to check that out.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin hardcore.
I'll take it.
But it's on Rev, so it came out with the Planet on a Chain record. This is like, because Rev seems to like to sign like non-Rev bands every now and again. So they sign.
Yeah, there must be somebody working there that like knows cool stuff.
Like every year they sign like 1 or 2 bands that are kind of outside, like you wouldn't expect to ever see on Rev. But so this came with like this and the Planet on a Chain record were like put out at the same time. So
I want to carry more Rev stuff, but I have to be pragmatic about what I'm spending for the distro, and not everything, but about half of what I've bought so far is through Ebullition, which is great. They're still
they're awesome. Yeah.
Awesome to work with. You just email them, they pull it for you. You usually get an email a couple days later. But different things cost different amounts. Like stuff on Blackwater and stuff on Profane Existence is like almost at cost. It's so cheap. Yeah. And of course, like stuff goes down in price the longer it's been sitting in their distro and whatever. But I want to get new Rev stuff, but it's like one of the more expensive labels to buy wholesale. Yeah. Like
if I were you, I would grab.
It's quality. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to.
I think that's gonna become a record. That's my hot pick for the.
Yeah, for sure.
That's gonna blow up a little bit.
And also, I emailed. Do you know the guy? Do you know Gil from Triple B? I haven't.
I don't know him that well. I've talked to him a handful of times. But
okay, because I emailed them. I emailed them about wholesale stuff too, and like at the, whatever the email address you're supposed to email people at. I haven't heard back. That was like a month ago. I was wondering if you run into him at all or anything.
No, I don't know. I think they moved back to Florida.
Oh, really?
I think they like have a warehouse in Mass, but like he's not living here anymore.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
I don't see him around at shows anymore, so I'm assuming he's not here.
I mean, who knows?
Every hardcore show you would see those guys at. I haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah, I mean that stuff ends up in junk folders or whatever. Just give it another shot. It's not. I have plenty of other stuff I can grab in the meantime. But yeah, no. The nice thing about Rev is like, the records are kind of expensive, but they do a lot of releases on cassette too.
And they're also like legit. You're going to get your stuff, and you're going to get it like in a timely fashion too. They're a business. They're not. Yeah, it's not some dude in a bedroom.
Right. Well, I order the Rev stuff through Ebullition because Ebullition carries all their shit. So
I also feels good to give Ebullition money.
Oh yeah, if I can. That's the nice thing is there's not too much stuff that they don't carry. Like they don't carry Triple B for whatever reason, but they carry everything from like Profane Existence, Havoc, Rev, I can't remember the name of the label, but the label that Rob Brigade's on. They carry overseas labels like Quality Control and Meisaka Un Ojo, the death metal label. They carry Nuclear War Now and Hell's Headbangers. They carry everything. So they cover a lot of ground with the stuff they carry. So it's nice to have that like one-stop shopping,
The thing with Triple B too is like, I don't know. I think it might just be a choice of theirs because I don't even see their stuff in like stores. I just don't think they distro their stuff. I think it's just they just don't really do it for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't think they're trying to be like rude or whatever. I think it's just like don't. It's just not a thing to do. Like, like I don't find that. I don't see their stuff. Usually when I see their stuff, it's like from them. Like it's at a show and one of their bands is playing, and one of their bands will have a box of other Triple B releases. But I don't see them in like if I'm flipping through records, I rarely even here because they were based here. You'd think I'd see them at Armageddon and stuff. I never really did. I don't know what that is.
Weird. All right. Well,
last night the guy. This is the best thing. The dude peeing on a guitar.
Nice. That splatter format kind of brings me back to like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like one podcast I've been listening to a lot lately has been that first 7-inch club. Have you checked that out at all?
No. You talked about that before, and I was like, you were talking about it, and I was like, immediately was like, I got to put that in my notes because that sounds like something I would fucking listen to
You
it for sure.
you dig it. It's pretty great. Like they talked about the Monster X demo 7-inch on the last one, but the thing that they what's that?
What's it called again?
Oh, first 7-inch club.
Okay, I'm putting it in my notes right now.
It's the name of a Fall Silent song. But they critique graphic layout stuff because one of the guys has a background. I don't know if he does it for work now, but he has at some point. And they always pull apart like dissect in a very funny way most of the time. Like, oh, I know that specific desktop publishing thing from the 90s. That's what that's from, that kind of thing. But they were talking about like all the Chris Callahan bands. I forget which one specifically they were talking about, but how everything had that blood splatter filter on it, like in the early 2000s.
Swarm, dude, that Swarm record.
Yeah, the Swarm. I had that Ruination record it was a clear 7-inch, but it was shaped like the United States.
Yeah.
And it was clear, and it had it was in it like a 10-inch sleeve and had like flames behind it, so it looked like the US was on fire.
Yep. I had that too.
That was a great record. Of course, the Buzzsaw, Left 4 Dead split. And I was collecting. That was one that I was collecting more than one copy of. Usually that's not my policy, but I was like, the Buzzsaw record's so awesome. Like, I'm gonna buy as many colors of this that I can find. And then when I was starting the distro, I was like, I'm gonna put a bunch of these up because I don't need more than one copy. And I sold both of them.
How many presses of that thing exist? It has to be like,
I think it's one of those. I think it's one of those deals where they're even the band isn't that sure kind of thing.
I still find them to this day in record stores all the time. I still find those in the wild all the time.
That's kind of the cool thing is it's still kind of a relatively cheap record to buy, and it's awesome. The music on it rules. Like, it's cool looking, and there's no less than I think 8 or 9 different colors. There's black, there's marbled gray, there's
like a purple.
Pink, there's like pea yellow. There's a lot of different colors of it. But what's nice is, and again, like I want to get copies of it, is that Left 4 Dead Devoid of Everything compilation that has everything on it. It's one of those things where like the original mixing on a lot of those records was kind of muddy, and they remixed it and it sounds really good. And I've noticed that lately with a few records that they actually had the masters, so they were able to make it sound better, where like a lot of times you don't want to mess with perfection, but this is not perfection. So they did that with the Lifetime Background, the Resurrection LP, the Hardcore Resurrection, Heresy Face Up to It. It's all different people doing these, of course. And Left 4 Dead. And like in every example I can think of, it made those records sound, at least in my opinion. Like I remember really liking Lifetime Background when it came out, but I'm like, it sounds like they're all like, it's just like there's some kind of like blanket over my speaker right now, like that kind of thing. And that New Age Records like had some really, really bad production in the early 90s. Like Mean Season, their stuff sounded like garbage, like just recording wise. So it's cool that like people have fixed that stuff, because I think it's worthwhile.
Ben NG nails it. That is every single No Idea release.
Yeah.
Just
the leftover pellets.
They just sweep shit off the floor and throw it and be like, yeah, whatever, man. This is the 99th pressing of this Against Me 7-inch. Just I'll make it make it just like fucking scrap colored vinyl.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like melted crayons or something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to abruptly and unprofessionally cut it short because it's about time to go pick up Griff.
Yeah.
But
my Leo's about to he's been tearing down. I mistakenly thought I could put up a gate just to keep him at bay. And I just constantly, I don't know if the listeners have been able to hear it constantly slam into the ground.
No, actually, I haven't heard it.
And then you hear this. Oh no. Little 3-year-old voice. Oh no, how'd this happen? Like I don't get it.
You're gonna see him like vault across in the background and crowd kill your new sign.
Yeah. I ran into this as hard as I could and it fell. I don't understand how it fell.
See, Mike knows. Mike knows what's up. Big shout out to Mike at Analog Attack, by the way.
Yes, I watch your stuff all the time.
What Are You Listening To channel or series. Usually Fridays and Saturdays. I'm going to be on one soon, March 28th, 27th, 28th, something like that. Really lots of really cool guests. A lot of people from bands that I grew up listening to that, you know, it's awesome to hear just them be cool, regular dudes and talk about records. Just awesome guy. So I'm intend to have him as a guest on here at some point. So yeah, shout out to Mike. What's up to Mike? That's it. I should probably, on that note,
Yeah,
on that
I
bombshell.
have a guest in here. So, all right.
All right. Talk to you soon, man. Good hang and broadcast. And broadcast.